adaptive learning, a new frontier in the liberated learning. As you know, I've been working with a lot of children, not only in the setting of the higher education where they are 18 to 21, but also I teach a musical instrument called tabla, which is an Indian drum, and it's played by fingers, and I teach that on the weekends. And I get to teach a lot of kids who also have some deficiencies. One of the kids is also autistic. And what we observed in that is music therapy really worked for him very well. Because as you know, when you tap your fingers, there are many parts of the brain who start working together. And then the recent studies show, and I was very intrigued by that because there was a lot of positive effect on him and his performance as well as behavior, and also his performance in his school. So what's going on here? So we looked at some of the research on neuronal connections and the finger tapping. But also what we found is that it's not only neurons, but there are glial cells. For every one neuron, there are about 9 glial cells which connect together, and they create this hummingbird on the background. And that has a particular, what we call a rhythmic quality. So when you connect some of the rhythms which you do in percussion or rhythmic instrument, that has a very positive effect in connecting those neurons who were not originally connected, because these glial cells really help create that. So what I'm going to do in my talk today is to take you through some of these ideas of neurophysiology and what we learned from that, and how does it all work, and then connect it to a model that we can use in the classroom, both in K-12 as well as in higher education, to provide learning in the way that meets the need of individual learner, whether they are like every one of us or they may have special needs. I think there was one comment made earlier that we do not know who is really who is really normal and who is really needs something more to learn from the different medium. So what we are trying to do here to understand and learn about human brain. So I'm going to take you through that. I do want to talk about a little bit putting it all together in a way that you have heard a lot of talks today, and I was very impressed with most of the talks that were done here, is that we are really making a lot of progress in terms of what are the assistive technologies, what are the adaptive technologies, what are the technologies that can bring information to the human brain. And I think that's excellent work, and that has to be done. We have reached a certain level of sophistication. The good news is the technology is becoming really, really available and becoming ubiquitous enough with all the iPads and iPhones that you can do a lot of things. But the bigger question is that what you do with the information when it reaches the brain with certain deficiencies. So that means if you talk about neurophysiology of some of the deficiencies which they have looked at with various scanning, brain scanning technologies, including fMRI, or if you get PET scans or SPECT scans, or as well as EEG, you realize that there are certain parts of the brain which are not connected properly. And there may be some deficiency of blood flow to certain part of the brain. So what my goal here is to provide that kind of interface that after the information is reached, how can we channel it to connect with the cognitive psychology of that person who has particular deficiency. So now we are going to provide an adaptive model for learning in a way that we can understand the learning models, and that's what I'm using in terms of the pedagogy. What are the specific learning models that can be utilized for that individual learner? And I'm not trying to create any broad brushes here, because we know it does not work. Every individual, like we do IEPs in the school, at every level we have to do adaptive learning with their own IEP as well as their own learning pathway. And can that be done? That's the proposal I'm going to propose to you today. A bit about statistics. As you know, the education business is huge. It's about 70 million students now in the United States in K-12, as well as it's reaching almost like 80 to 90 million students. If you look at the expense, combining both post-secondary and secondary education, that's going towards almost $1.3 trillion. And if you look at the educational attainment, if you look, and there you can see that the bachelor students, and then you are also looking at undergraduate, and then graduate master's degree. Doctoral degree is 1.5%, master's is 7.6%, bachelor's is 90.4%. This is the percentage which we are looking at from this 70 million students that we are talking about. The reason I'm showing that academic attainment, because that connects with the attainment versus earning. And this is what happens when we lose out a particular segment of the learners because we have not provided them an interface that they can productively participate in the social process, then we lose out in not only the workforce, but we are also losing out their ability to earn for themselves and be independent. And I think that's where we need to make the playing field equal for everyone in a way that they can learn the best, no matter where they are. And I'll give an example that when you go to the United Nations and if you go to General Assembly Hall, there are about 180 or 170 nations are represented. And they all have different languages. So you will notice that everyone has his headphones in United Nations. So when someone is speaking in, let's say, Arabic, it's getting translated in real time to everyone in every language. And I've been to United Nations, you can see on the top there is this box where all these people working very hard to make sure that everyone gets what is being said in their own language. I envision the same kind of system in the classroom for a student with all kinds of disabilities. So whether I'm teaching you, when they are receiving it, they should receive it in a way that they can receive it. And that's my contention, is that most of the disabled students are really not dumb students. We make them, outcast them in various different ways, which is the worst thing one can do. But if we can provide them that language interface, and I'm not talking about physical language or English and French, I'm talking about learning language, how they learn best. If we can provide them that translation in real time when they are sitting in the classroom, they will be attending the classroom rather than being outcast in a different classroom. So if you look at the number of disabled students from 3 to 21-year-old, you see that there are 6.5 million students, and that's reaching about 13% of the student population. It's a staggering number. And that's what has been said earlier as well in the morning talk. So if you look at here in terms of distribution of disability types, larger percentages in specific learning disabilities, which include dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. All of these are specific disabilities, but there is also increasing number in autism spectrum and other kinds of disabilities. So if you look at, this is a slightly older slide, but I wanted to show that even if you look at participation of the disabled student and undergraduate or graduate students, what you see is that they are close to 4 to, I would say, 6 to 10%. So it is a significant population which we cannot ignore, and that is the passion of this group. And I'm preaching to the choir here that we want to make their life much better and also their experience as equal as everyone else. And if you look at the Individual Disability Education Act, IDEA of 2004, that defines all these disabilities in terms of autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disability, orthopedic impairment, etc. If you look at all of these disabilities, then you have to define and diagnose them. So of course we have DSM-4, and DSM-5 is going to come soon, as I hear. And if you look at, it provides the diagnostic features, prevalence, course, and familial patterns. And manual also provides specific diagnostic criteria. But we all know from our own experiences is that it's not perfect. And if you look at it, has its own problem of broad generalization based on empirical data and not based on some of the reasoning that we are now learning from the neurophysiology. And I think that's where we need to bring that in. If we look at that American Psychology Association and this DSM-4, most of us will be falling in one or the other categories. So we need to really define it much finer way so that we can do much better job of identification. So what we need, this is my urgent call for learning equality for all. And I think we have learned in the educational slavery too long that we need to be free from that educational slavery. And that is because we are doing one size fits all. That's one of the biggest problems, whether you go into a classroom or if you go to online, one size fits all is the modality. So what we need a level playing field for every person, with whether they are able or disabled, It has to be equal playing field. Students with disability learn differently, but they are equally capable. And I have seen that over and over and over again. So I'm very passionate about that. They need a different interface for learning, that is for sure, and that's where what we propose is brain-based adaptive learning. We can diagnose using some of the techniques and tools which I will present here, and then provide them content in the way that they can receive it in the language of learning that they understand. So that's the premise. Now the good news is the educational technology frontier is growing quite rapidly and moving very fast. So if you look at, we have mobile learning, we all talk about iPads and iPhones and everything. We have talked about augmented reality, where you can take an unreal object or what we call virtual reality with the real objects. And then you can go to collaborative learning, serious games, virtual learning environment, immersive learning, and we also talked about teleoperated experiments when we were talking about the experimental lab. And then adaptive learning and brain-based synaptic learning system. So we know that technology is going to catch up, but what we are doing right now is illustrated here. We are treating everyone one size fits all, whether you have different learning strategy, learning behavior, whether you are a monkey or you are an elephant or anything else, we will teach you the same way. And you have to learn with the teacher's model. And if you do not learn the way he teaches, too bad. There is no recourse. You can take a D grade or you can drop out of the class. So and that's because of that we have very high incompletion, or what we call very high dropout rates. These dropout rates are really national disaster, because not only we are having people dropping out of the educational system, but look what we do in terms of the money. So a student has taken $50,000 loan, he gets into the college, he doesn't finish it, now he's stuck with the $50,000 loan, and he's not productive in the society. So we are getting this kind of behavior from all sides. So I think this is unacceptable. This is where I say this behavior that we have done for many, many, many years, unacceptable. So what can we do here? We have to go from one size fits all to adaptive learning for all. So what we are saying is that, can we dynamically render content in different cognitive psychology way that it will then resonate with the different learners? They may come from different disabilities. So yes, it is possible. And so if you look at the technology trends today, we have gone from multimedia toolkits, web toolkits, and we are also talking about different kinds of adaptive and assistive technologies. And now we are going into learning management system, learning content management system, and we can throw a few more acronyms here, and it will not end. But the trend is towards making everything adaptive. If you talk today to publishers, to course developers, LMS people, everyone wants, and they have realized that they need adaptive system because it has to be personalized learning experience. So what can we do to make this personalized, especially with the understanding of neurophysiology of the learning? So in this case, we start with what we call is, what is brain? What are the facts about the brain? Brain is the machinery which we have to now attack and understand in order to get over this problem of one size fits all, so that we can tailor all the learning according to the brain maps. So if you look at here, the brain is only 1.2 kilograms weight, average, and it has 100 billion nerve cells which connect into 100 trillion synaptic connections for synapses and synaptic global learning. But if you look at the 2% average body weight consumes 20% of your energy. So it's high energy consuming device. So all the sugar that you just ate, where did it go? Right onto your brain, serving the brain. So I think if we really want to work with this high energy system, then obviously we need to know more parts of it. So if I go into anatomy of this, we'll probably need 3 days of this lecture. So I've simplified it for all human beings. This is how it works. So there are different parts of it, and there are 3 major functions of the brain, and we'll go into detail some of that. One primary function is to get the information to brain. And that's what all the adaptive assistive technologies are doing with different disabilities. How can we get information to the brain? But once the information comes to the brain, you have to make sense out of it, which is what we call secondary function of the brain, which is cognition. Make sense out of the information. And the third one is to use that cognitive or understood language or the subject matter that you're learning, now use it in a higher level of thinking and thought and deep thinking processes. Those are called tertiary processes. And those could be called as what we call is the higher level functions of the forebrain.